So my name is Kevin Smith. I am the Director of Product Development at StockTrak. Today I am going to go through the new features that we are releasing for the fall of 2021. Now, if you joined me for the presentation last spring, some of the stuff is going to look familiar because it was things that we were working on and have finished. So as a general overview, I'm going to break up what I'm going to talk about into general improvements to the StockTrak platform, the improvements that we've made to the trading and research engines, the improvements to administration, and the new things that we've added, particularly for financial literacy programs and classes. So if you have any questions while I'm going, feel free to drop a message in the QA and I can see that and I'll respond to it right away. So in terms of general improvements, late last spring we released our new StockTrak dashboard. So the dashboard on StockTrak for students, you as the teacher would see it if you switch to the student view, now combines a lot more information in one place. There's fewer widgets and less clutter to help students actually get around. So if I open up the dashboard here, you can see it. So if I have an assignment for my professor, you can see it up at the top here with all the tasks that my professor has asked me to do. And an easy button to just access each task to just jump into it right away. And if your class has multiple assignments, they'll all be queued up here to help your students just access what they need, see it right away, first thing they see when they log in. If you're using our budget game, it also has your students' information there. If you're not using our budget game, it won't appear. A summary of their trading position. If your students have begun trading already, they'll get a brief snapshot of their open positions as well. So everything is one place. The old dashboard, it was great, but there was so much clutter. We got a lot of feedback from students that they weren't really able to effectively navigate what they were looking at. So that is resolved with the new dashboard. The next update is our onboarding session. So another feedback that we always get from professors and students is that we want to make the platform easier for users to actually use, to start for the first time. Particularly for students, the most frequent question that we get is, how do I make my first trade? So we've always been improving our tutorial videos, and we have the assignments set up so professors can require the students to watch the tutorial videos to help get started. But we've also introduced new onboarding series to the platform to help students just kind of make their first actions. So the first time they go to make a trade, for example, we have a pop-up that walks them through the different pieces of the trading interface, how they all work together, what they actually need to do to place their first orders. So this is in conjunction with our existing tutorial videos that really help students get off to a running start and not spend any more class time than we need to learning how to use that technology, but really focusing on the educational components of it. Next up for our general improvements, live chat. So we added a live chat feature late last semester where students can connect to our support team live during market hours, which has been great. It means there's been significantly fewer issues that come back to the professor because our support team can just handle them without you having to worry about it. We also added a new feature for the live chat where if the students come in after market hours, we did add FAQ features to it that can answer some of those frequently asked questions. Why didn't my order go through? How's my buying power calculated? Those kinds of things. If the FAQ doesn't have the response, then it goes to our ticket support desk. And as always, we answer all student inquiries within 1 business day. So we're putting a huge emphasis on, generally speaking, making it so professors need to be spending less time on how students interact with StockTrak and more time on the educational aspect of actually building the portfolio and trading. The last new major feature just in the general updates is our new beta program. So historically, whenever we pushed major updates to the StockTrak platform, it kind of happens all at once, where the entire system updates all at one time, and we push it forward. This has some advantages of kind of having a clean break, but the biggest disadvantage, and I'm sure if you've been using StockTrak for more than 5 years, you would have noticed that there may have been student complaints right as the switchover happened because of some issue or bug that our QA team may have missed that could impact your class. Now, going forward, we're not going to be doing that anymore. Instead, each student will have the option to opt into our beta program. So as we release new pages, they can actually access those new pages ahead of everybody else and get some feedback from the students who want to use the latest and greatest rather than just forcing everyone to use new version right away. So this screen you're looking at here is actually our new open positions page that we're going to be releasing for beta testing within the next few weeks. The general release of the next major version of StockTrak will happen probably for the spring semester, but over this fall we'll be releasing new updates to each pages, the trading pages, the professor reports pages, all of those one by one, and inviting both professors and students to test them out before everyone is forced into the new version. So a big focus on giving early access and a lot of feedback before we push new updates on everybody all at once. So we'll have more communications going out to professors over the next coming weeks when the first pages are available for students to start testing. The first new page will be the open positions page and then the equities trading page. So we're expecting both of those by early September. The new other updates focus on our trading and research tools. So the first one that we added late in the spring semester was our new mutual funds research tool. So if you've seen StockTrak's research tools before, there's a lot in there. But one thing that was missing was some deep dives into mutual funds and ETFs. So we added 3 new widgets focusing specifically on these securities. So if you go to the quotes and research pages, you'll find the mutual funds research tools on the left-hand navigation. For each fund, we have a fund overview that just kind of talks about the investment objectives and what's in it. A fund performance showing the performance of each fund over time, and fund holdings, which gives a summary of what's actually in these funds. So these work for both mutual funds and ETFs. They are more accurate for US, but we also have a lot of good data for Canada and the UK as well. If you are looking for research tools for outside of those regions, just get in contact with us and we can kind of put it on our roadmap of new features that we're trying to plan out in the future. The next up is custom exchanges. So custom exchanges on StockTrak are a way for teachers to be able to create a custom exchange for their class. And what that means is that instead of having an open symbol input, you would have the ability to just have a drop down where your students would be having a set list of stocks to trade. The most common time this comes up in an actual investing class would be if you want to limit your students to just the S&P 500. For example, I'll pull up the trading page here so you can see what it looks like, where instead of having the simple input where I would type something in, it would give the option of the stocks that I put as the professor. You can have multiple custom exchanges. So we're also working with several classes that are doing, for example, ETF specific competitions where they have 200 ETFs that they want students to be able to trade, and they group those by sector or by different classification. And so they'd have a list on the top here of all the different exchanges that are available and then all the symbols available in here. So this is not used as much in regular classes, so much in special competitions. But in regular classes, what you can also do is instead of using a white list, you can set a black list. So you can set a list of 50 symbols you don't want your students to trade. Now, this has come up quite a bit when professors want to, for example, restrict their students from trading triple leveraged ETFs. That gives them the ability to do that without having other bigger impacts across the entire class. So it works both ways. If you want to test it out, just next time you create your class, you'll have the option to create a custom exchange, or you can talk with our support team at the live chat to get more information about how it works or some ideas that you'd like to try out and see how you can actually implement them. The next big one is risk-adjusted returns. So StockTrak has always had Sharpe ratio and alpha beta rankings, and by always I mean for the past 10 years or so. But we've actually done some major revisions to our risk-adjusted rankings over the summer. First up, the Sharpe ratio. We are using a new calculation. It's basically the big changes are we're using annualized daily Sharpe ratio instead of just the Sharpe ratio over the days of the portfolio. But the more important ratio is that we are removing weekends. The previous version of Sharpe ratio used every day of the account history, including Saturdays and Sundays, which means that the variance of the portfolio is actually understated compared to what it would really be compared to the just every trading day. The new calculation just uses Monday to Friday. It excludes holidays, so it's a more accurate representation of the student's actual variance over time. We also previously had alpha beta rankings built into the site. We discontinued these last semester due to some issues with the consistency of the beta that we were receiving for each stock in our data feeds. Particularly for classes that were including international trading, the alpha beta rankings would start to get less and less useful for their classes and harder for the students to actually track out how they're working. So this semester, we're releasing two new ranking types, Jensen's Alpha, which is going to be based on the beta of the portfolio itself, not the individual holdings, and we're also releasing the trainer ratios. So these two are still in development. We are collecting all the data required to actually calculate them in our backend right now, and they'll be released for classes in the next couple of weeks. We're entering the final phases of testing right now. Next up on the administration side. So the first and foremost is improved report exports. The professor reports are always a cornerstone of what makes StockTrak useful in classes. The key improvements that you're going to see this semester compared to before is that first, we have historical open positions daily. In previous iterations of StockTrak, we would snap your students' open positions every week and at the end of your class. The new version is every single day, so both you and your students can pull out the historical open positions as often as you like. The older versions of StockTrak and the professor reports would also only allow you to export the last day's open positions. So if you tried to export on a Thursday, for example, you would only get the previous Friday, which was causing some problems with different professors that were trying to do things like calculate ESG ratings of a portfolio. But now you can export them live. So if you go to the professor reports and you select today and you export it, you're going to get this minute's open positions for your entire class. I'm sure that most professors thought that's how it already was until they were confused why the data was being inconsistent, but now it is working the way that everyone would expect it to. The transaction history reports on StockTrak now also include bond payments. So that was another issue that's been coming up more and more as we've been getting more and more fixed income classes using StockTrak, is that we were paying out the interest payments on bonds on the appropriate dates, but the students couldn't actually see it, just their cash was going up before. So now the transaction history reports for students will show when all of those payments are being made. Coming soon, the last major reporting project that we're working on this summer is a faster full class export. So if you have a class with 30 to 50 students, even up to 100 students, the reports work okay. They might take a few minutes to load. But if you have classes of 250 students, or if you're trying to do a department-wide challenge with 500 students, then you might have some problems exporting the full data for your entire challenge. The new version is going to be using a new queuing system that is just more consistent, it's faster, and it's going to work for classes of every size. So that's also something that's a big improvement if you've been using StockTrak outside of the normal classroom setting. On the administration side, the next big improvement is TA accounts. Now, this is something that professors have been asking for a long time. We did release the first version of it in the spring semester. With a TA account, you can assign anybody who's in your class to have full report access. So you don't need to share your professor login with a TA in order for them to do grading or do evaluations. The TA accounts can access all of your reports, they can create and manage assignments, but they can't change any of your core class trading rules, and they can't create a new class themselves. To create a TA account, what you would do is you go to your professor reports under administration, and you go to your registration file. Now this registration file lists all of the students in your class, and all you would do is that there's this new column called is TA, and you can flick this yes. So that makes this account a TA, which would let this user access the reports for this class. So if you have a TA in your class, when you first create your class on StockTrak, you have the option to create two demo accounts. We call them the -A and -B, and that's what you could use to just assign one of them as a TA and distribute that login to one of your students. If you're later on in your class and you want to add a TA, you can either assign an existing student account, or you can ask our support team, hey, I have a TA, they're not going to be trading or anything, just can you set them up with a TA account? And we can do that for you too. It only takes about 2 minutes, so you should be able to get it right live then and there. The last big one on the administration side is our assignment tracking update. So the curriculum side of our assignments engine, where we have lessons with quizzes, has become a more and more important part of more and more classes, and we've been putting a lot of enhancements specifically to help that side of the equation. So the assignments tracking update does two important things. First, it starts saving the actual questions that students answer. So the previous version would just store, for example, this student got an 80% on that quiz. This new version will show you which questions they got right and wrong. It will also give you a summary report for your class for each quiz showing which questions, your class as a whole tends to be getting right and wrong. It also starts keeping timestamps for every quiz. So we've done some time studies ourselves, so we have an idea of how long each quiz takes and each lesson, and we're going to be giving that information to professors on the assignment creation page so they have a better idea of what kind of workload they're asking their students to do. Um, and then in both of these cases, we're going to give you class summary reports too. So you'll get a bird's eye view of where your students are struggling, where they're already doing really well, so you can speed that part up. This is most important for the classes who heavily use our assignments engine, particularly personal finance and introductory investing classes. The last section that we have updated is our financial literacy. So financial literacy classes has been a big part of what StockTrak has been all about for the last several years. Um, the particularly working with schools who are starting new personal finance classes, and we've been working with a lot of schools that are talking about starting campus-wide financial literacy programs, where every student has the option to complete a basic financial literacy course that's just kind of running in the background without very much professor intervention. So on the financial literacy side, the most important part is we have a huge content update to our assignments. So over 100 of our previous lessons have been updated, particularly our Investing 101 curriculum. About 60% of that has been rewritten from scratch over the summer with our new team of academic advisors that helped us identify the weak points and help improve them. We also have added new personal finance lessons over the summer, focusing on student loans, career development, renting taxation. Um, there's also some in there for simple and living wills and a few other topics. So we basically have been going through all of the major financial literacy textbooks and making sure that what we have can align to how those topics are being taught in classes, which can be used as either a supplement for an existing textbook or a standalone for a wider program. We also added dozens of new introductory level lessons in economics, accounting, management, and marketing. Now, these lessons aren't new. They've actually been used on our high school side for a few years now, but we previously didn't have them on the college side because they might not be up at the level of a university accounting class, for example. However, we have been working with a lot of schools that have been working with high school outreach programs, campus-wide educational initiatives with non-business majors, and they've been looking for exactly that kind of introductory level stuff without having to find whole new textbooks. And so this fits that niche perfectly. They're written at a more of a high school grade level, so it's perfect for students who are seeing this information for the first time. We can give a wider introduction to these lessons in the next few weeks as they actually get added to the assignments engine. The lessons are written and ready to go and they've been tested, but they're not available for professors to add to their classes quite yet. Over the summer, we've also made a number of improvements to our budgeting game. So we've been talking about our budgeting game for about a year now. So the budgeting game itself is not new, but this is for personal finance and university financial literacy initiatives. Students manage their budget for a simulated year. We focus on pay yourself first with students setting and hitting savings goals, managing cash flow, and building a credit score. I'll just do a quick start of the game here. The game progresses by students rolling a dice or a single die, and they move forward through a month with different financial events happening at different thresholds of the game here. So it's taking a second to get started here, probably because I haven't had this game go. Oh, because I'm in the wrong class. Yeah, that's strange. But I think our development team is pushing a live update right now. So that would be what that is. But if you're interested in the budgeting game for a personal finance or a financial literacy class, we'd be happy to give you a demo or give you some more information about how that works. Again, on the personal finance side, we created a new way to use our portfolio simulation called weekly deposits. Now, with a standard class on StockTrak, you would give your students $1 million portfolio or a $100,000 portfolio, and the students manage it over the course of the semester, which is fine when you're talking about pure portfolio management of managing a certain amount of assets to get a certain amount of growth. But on the personal finance side, we really wanted to emphasize regular deposits and reinvesting money over time, which is where our weekly deposits come from. So just like in a real retirement account, a person would make a deposit every month, and then they'd have to make a plan on how they'd continue to reinvest what their new deposits are. The weekly deposits adds cash to your students' accounts every week. Your class will only last a couple of months, so it's an accelerated pace, but it gets them in the practice of new money's been added. What are you going to do with it? and the idea of continually rebalancing the portfolio. The students start with a very small amount of cash, which grows over time, both from the deposits that are being made as their retirement contributions and from the growth that they're seeing on their portfolio. So we do control the rankings. So we also adjust the student's starting cash so their percent return is consistent. But if you are using weekly deposits, it's not going to be compatible with the risk adjusted rankings because all of the measures of variance just don't work when you start adding extra cash every week. The last piece is we've improved our certificates and gamification engine. So again, this applies for professors and universities are using as more of a financial literacy program where you want to issue certificates of completion for our investing courses or our personal finance lessons. So we have 2 certificates that are available, and if you turn these on for your class, your students will be able to earn a certificate of completion upon completion of your class, so long as they finish all the required assignments. One for Investing 101, which covers all of our basic investing curriculum, and one for Financial Literacy, which covers all of our personal finance curriculum. So in a nutshell, that is everything that we have new under the sun. Before we adjourn, does anyone have any questions for me? Can you walk briefly through the process of setting up a new class? Sure, I can do that. So if you have used StockTrak before, when you log in with your professor account, the last item on the main menu here will be called Admin. If you're creating a new professor account for the first time, you'll be taken straight to the class creation page. But in either case, what you're going to be doing here is register a new class. The first thing you choose is your class subject. What this does is that if you choose that you're a personal finance professor, it opens up options for the budgeting game and some of our personal finance curriculum. If you choose our other options, it kind of streamlines things down to what's actually applicable for your class. Next, you choose your service level. So this is how long your class lasts. It has a restriction both on the length of the class and the number of trades students can place. Gold and silver are the most common. Many textbooks offer a coupon code where students can either redeem for a free account or get a discount on the list price. You also have the option to add a buy and hold account for an extra $6. Now, this is a very common way StockTrak is used in classes where a professor has both their active trading portfolio for students and they have what we call the buy and hold portfolio, where the buy and hold portfolio, the students can only make a total of 20 trades throughout the semester. When the student signs in, they'll have both portfolios available and they can switch between them at any time to monitor their performance. But in any case, I will set my class name. The number of students in my class. The number of students in your class matters only if you choose instructor invoice, where a school would have the option to either have the students pay by credit card when they register or that we can invoice the university for the amount. So the number of students in your class would impact if you have a professor invoice. I'm just going to have 1 student. The registration dates are when your students can come in and create their class or create their accounts. So many professors want all of their students to register in the first couple of weeks of class. They close registration, and only after registration is closed do they actually allow trading to start. In this case, I'm just going to let it be open for the entire time. Your time zone, which is it impacts the timestamps throughout the site, including the transaction histories for students, so it's a little bit more consistent. And the forum is the ability for students to post messages to each other. Most of the time, your school's LMS is going to already have a discussion feature built in, so you won't need to use the forum here. But for some schools or challenges that might not be using the LMSs directly, might include the forum. Your academic level, this is really just kind of for our information of what kind of professors are using us. The description would appear on the registration page for your students. And the textbook, again, a lot of these textbooks offer coupons for your students. So by using these, by setting the book for your class, you'd be able to decide which coupon is going to be valid for your students. Next up is the rules for the portfolio simulation. currency, the weekly deposits that I just talked about. If you want to use them, you'd set them here, how much cash they start with. Let me zoom in a little bit. And then you can set all kinds of settings for your class. Minimum prices to rule out penny stocks. Interest charged on cash. You can even set this negative to discourage students from hoarding cash, actually lose money if they're not investing. The types of rankings you want to include, whether they can trade on margin, short selling, day trading. If you're not really familiar with all of these, or if you're using StockTrak for the first time, we kind of recommend just leaving everything at the defaults because this is pretty much what most classes are using. The only ones to really keep in mind here are the public portfolios, which means your students can see each other's trades. You as the professor can always see what your class is doing, but this would let your students see each other's trades. Do you as the professor want to appear in the rankings? Now, most professors don't want to be in the rankings with their students, but we do see an increase in engagement because it becomes a game of beat the professor. Trade notes is another really important one, where the trade notes is requiring students to write why they're making every trade in the platform. Even if you set this to no, they have the option of keeping a trading diary, but this one, it gives you as the professor some insight, and it gives students some insight when they go at the end of the semester to create their final reports. You can also decide whether or not you want your students to have badges and certificates. These are basically the engagement pieces that I was talking about earlier, where they can earn things for completing different things in the platform. Next up, what can your students trade? So equities, stocks, and ETFs. You can also include cryptocurrencies that we have a full feed for that. We have over 30 different countries for stocks. So if you're interested in any of the international exchanges, you can turn them on. The only thing to keep in mind is that our US data feeds are real time, whereas our international data feeds are not. So some are end of day, some are 15-minute delayed. So if you're having some sort of department challenge that has prizes, we do recommend keeping it just to US. For every security type, you can set the commissions and the commission structure. You can set a position limit, which says how much your students can invest in any single security. So for example, this says I can only put 25% of my portfolio value into Apple. And a diversification limit, which says how much of my portfolio can go into this security type. One common way to use this, for example, would be say I can only put 75% of my investments in equities. The rest I would need to put in mutual funds or bonds or options or something else. Yeah, we do have mutual funds, bonds, options, futures, future options, forex, and cash spots are the security types we currently have available. You as the professor can also go in and change these settings at any time. So it's also very common for a professor to set their class up only allowing stocks and then turning on options and futures later. Next is the creating my assignment. So as I was mentioning earlier, there's tons of stuff in here for your assignments. The most important things for a typical class on StockTrak are these first 10 items. These are the things that your students need to know in order to be able to use StockTrak successfully, including the tutorial videos that walk them through the pieces of StockTrak and making their first trade. For every lesson or every assignment on StockTrak, you'd give it a name. We usually recommend going weekly. The dates where the assignment is active, and you also have the option of setting a reward. So when my students finish this, I'll give them an extra $100 bonus to their stock portfolio. We have a ton of different lessons here. The intermediate lessons are the kind of after they've done these first 10 things that are most important. These are the next most important 20 things. All of these are super short and really just help students get started. We have a wide library of personal finance lessons, career prep, which focuses on our career center and finding a job after graduation, our investing 101 course. This is kind of a self-contained investing unit. If a student, this isn't really applicable necessarily for an investing class, but if you have a class that doesn't focus on building a portfolio, this is a good place as a supplement for students to get started. And you can actually ask your students to complete specific actions. So this week, I want you to place 15 trades in your portfolio. And the assignments engine is going to track all of that and give you reports on who's doing what and when. So once you've got it set up, you can create more assignments later as well, but once it's set up for the first time, you'll get this link here, and you'll get an email confirmation of this as well. Just use this link, and this will take your students to your class registration page for them to get signed up. Can students go to the lesson if it is not assigned? Yes, they can. Under our Learning Center at the top here, all of the lessons that are in the assignments engine are also available here. The only one students would have a hard time finding is the Investing 101 because we kind of don't make that as prominent if you're not using Investing 101 in your class. The last thing on this confirmation page here is where you could create your demo accounts. So if you wanted a TA, you just press Get Accounts. It'll give you a login to send to your TA. So that's all you need to know to set up your class. And then under administration, you can change the rules, create new assignments, and view your reports later as well. Okay, any other questions? I guess not. So thank you for joining me. If you do have any other questions, you can reach me, ksmith@stocktrak.com, or you can use the live chat support to get in touch with the support team. And if it's a new feature that you'd like to see, they can get in touch with me as well. So have a great day. It was a quick half-hour introduction.